everyone, so you can't see me at the moment because I'm having to use my phone to record, as I've found that I'm having some issues with my microphone. So let's have a look at chapter 48 of Black Beauty, Farmer Thorogood and his grandson Willie. At this sale, of course, I found myself in company with the old broken down horses, some lame, some broken-winded, some old, and some that I am sure it would have been merciful to shoot. The buyers and sellers too, many of them, looked not much better off than the poor beasts they were bargaining about. There were poor old men trying to get a horse or pony for a few pounds that might drag about some little wood or coal cart. There were poor men trying to sell a worn-out beast for £2 or £3 rather than have the greater loss of killing him. Some of them looked as if poverty and hard times had hardened them all over, but there were others that I would have willingly used the last of my strength in serving, poor and shabby but kind and human, with voices that I could trust. There was one tottering old man who took a great fancy to me, and I to him, but I was not strong enough. It was an anxious time. Coming from the better part of the fair, I noticed a man who looked like a gentleman farmer and a young boy by his side. He had a broad back and round shoulders, a kind, ruddy face, and he wore a broad-brimmed hat, which, when he came up to me and my companions, he stood still and gave a pitiful look round upon us. I saw his eyes rest on me. I still had a good mane and tail, which did something for my appearance. I pricked my ears and looked at him. "There's a horse, Willie, that has known better days." "Poor old fellow," said the boy. "Do you think, Grandpa, he was ever a carriage horse?" "Oh, yes, my boy," said the farmer, coming closer. "He might have been anything when he was young. Look at his nostrils and his ears, the shape of his neck and shoulder. There's a great deal of breeding about that horse." He put his hand and gave me a kind pat on the neck. I put out my nose in answer to his kindness. The boy stroked my face. "Poor old fellow. See, Grandpa, how well he understands kindness. Could you not buy him and make him young again, as you did with Ladybird?" "My dear boy, I can't make all old horses young. Besides, Ladybird was not so very old. She was run down and badly used." Well, Grandpapa, I don't believe that this one is old. Look at his mane and tail. I wish you would look into his mouth, and then you could tell. Though he is so very thin, his eyes are not sunk in like some old horses." The gentleman laughed. "Bless the boy, he is as horsey as his old grandfather. But do look at his mouth, Grandpapa, and ask the price. I am sure he would grow young in our meadows." The man who had brought me for sale now put in his word. "The young gentleman's a real knowing one, sir. Now the fact is, this here hoss, which means it's probably sounds like he was from the Black Country. "This here hoss is just pulled down with overwork in the cabs. He is not an old one, and I heard as how the veterinary should say that a 6 months run off would set him upright, being how his wind is not broken. I've had the tending of him these 10 days past, and a gratefuller, pleasanter animal I never met with, and 'twould be worth a gentleman's while to give a £5 note for him and let him have a chance. I'll be bound he'd be worth £20 next spring." The old gentleman laughed, and the boy looked up eagerly. "Oh, Grandpapa, did you not say the colt sold for £5 more than you expected? You would not be poorer if you did buy this one." The farmer slowly felt my legs, which were much swelled and strained. Then he looked at my mouth. 13 or 14, I should say. "Just trot him out, will you?" I arched my poor thin neck and raised my tail a little and threw out my legs as well as I could, for they were very stiff. "What is the lowest you will take for him?" said the farmer as I came back. £5, sir, and that was the lowest price my master set." "'Tis a speculation," said the old gentleman, shaking his head, but at the same time drawing out his purse. "Quite a speculation. Have you any more business here?" he said, counting the sovereigns into his hand. "No, sir, I can take him for you to the inn, if you please." "Do so. I am going there now." They walked forward, and I was led behind. The boy could hardly control his delight. The old gentleman seemed to enjoy his pleasure. I had a good feed at the inn, and was then gently ridden home by a servant of my new master's, and turned into a large meadow with a shed in one corner of it. Mr. Thoroughbred, for that was the name of my benefactor, gave orders that I should have hay and oats every night and morning, and the run of the meadow during the day. "And you, Willie," said he, "must take the oversight of him. I give him in charge to you." The boy was very proud of his charge, and undertook it in all seriousness. There was not a day when he did not pay me a visit, sometimes picking me out from amongst the other horses and giving me a bit of carrot, or something good, or sometimes standing by me while I ate my oats. He always came with kind words and caresses, and of course I grew very fond of him. He called me old crony, as I used to come to him in the field and follow him about. Sometimes he brought his grandfather, who always looked closely at my legs. "This is our point, Willie," he should say, "but he is improving so steadily that I think we shall see a change for the better in the spring." The perfect rest, the good food, the soft turf, and gentle exercise soon began to tell on my condition and my spirits. I had a good constitution from my mother, and I was never strained when I was young, that I had a better chance than many horses who have been worked before they came to their full strength. During the winter my legs improved so much that I began to feel quite young again. The spring came round, and one day in March Mr. Thorogood determined that he would try me in the phaeton. I was well pleased, and he and Willie drove me for a few miles. My legs were not stiff now, and I did the work with perfect ease. "He's growing young, Willie. We must give him a little gentle work now, and by midsummer he will be as good as Ladybird. He has a beautiful mouth and good paces. They can't be better." "Oh, Grandpapa, how glad I am you bought him." "So am I, my boy. But he has to thank you more than me. We must now be looking for a quiet, genteel place for him, where he will be valued." One day during this summer, the groom cleaned and dressed me with such extraordinary care that I thought some new change must be at hand. He trimmed my fetlocks and legs, passed the tar brush over my hoofs, and even parted my forelock. I think the harness had an extra polish. Willie seemed half anxious, half merry as he got into the chaise with his grandfather. "If the ladies take to him," "If the ladies take to him," said the old gentleman, "they'll be suited and he'll be suited. We can but try." At the distance of a mile or two from the village we came to a pretty low house with a lawn and shrubbery at the front and a drive up to the door. Willie rang the bell and asked if Mrs. Bloomfield or Miss Ellen was at home. Yes, they were, so while Willie stayed with me, Mr. Thorogood went into the house. In about 10 minutes he returned, followed by 3 ladies. One tall, pale lady, wrapped in a white shawl, leaning on a younger lady with dark eyes and a merry face. The other, a very stately-looking person, was Miss Bloomfield. They all came and looked at me and asked questions. The younger lady, that was Miss Ellen, took to me very much. She said she was sure she should like me. I had such a good face. The tall, pale lady said that she should always be nervous riding behind a horse that had once been down, as I might come down again, and if she did, she should never get over it. "You see, ladies," said Mr. Thorogood, "many first-rate horses have had their knees broken up through the carelessness of their drivers without any fault of their own, and from what I could see of this horse, I should say that is his case. But of course I do not want to influence you. If you incline, you can have him on trial, and your coachman will see that what he thinks of him." "You have always been such a good adviser to us about our horses," said this stately lady, "that your recommendation would go a long way with me, and if my sister Lavinia sees no objection, we should accept your offer of a trial with thanks." It was then arranged that I should stay for the next day. In the morning a smart-looking young man came for me. At first he looked pleased, but when he saw my knees he said in a disappointed voice, "I didn't think, sir, you would have recommended my ladies a blemish horse like that." "Handsome is that handsome does," says my master. "You are only taking him as a trial, and I'm sure you will do fairly by him, young man. If he is not as safe as any horse you ever drove, send him back." I was led to my new home, placed in a comfortable stable, fed and left to myself. The next day, when the groom was cleaning my face, he said, "This is just like the star that Black Beauty had. He is much the same height too. I wonder where he is now." A little further on he came to the place in my neck where I was bled and where a little knot was left in the skin. He almost started and began to look him over carefully, talking to himself. "White staff in the forehead, one white foot on the off side, this little knot just in that place." Then he looked in the middle of my back. "And as I'm alive, there is that little patch of white hair that John used to call Beauty's 3-penny bit. It must be Black Beauty. Why, Beauty, do you know me? Little Joe Green that almost killed you?" And he began patting me as if he was quite overjoyed. I could not say that I remember him, for now he was a fine-grown young fellow with black whiskers and a man's voice, but I was sure he knew me, and that he was Joe Green, and I was very glad. I put my nose up to him and tried to say that we were friends. I never saw a man so pleased. give you a fair trial, I think so indeed. I wonder who the rascal was that broke your knees, my old beauty. You must have been badly served out somewhere. Well, well, it won't be my fault if you haven't good times now. If you haven't good times of it now. I wish John Manley was here to see you. In the afternoon, I was put into a low park chair and brought to the door. Miss Ellen was going to try me. Mr. Green went with her. I soon found that she was a good driver, and she seemed pleased with my paces. I heard Joe telling her about me, and he was sure that I was Squire Gordon's old black beauty. When we returned, the other sister had come out to hear how I had behaved myself. She told them what she had just heard, and said, I shall certainly write to Mrs. Gordon and tell her that her favourite horse has come to us. How pleased she will be. After this, I was driven every day for a week or so, and as I appeared to be quite safe, Miss Lavinia at last ventured out in the small close carriage. After this, it was quite decided to keep me and call me by my old name of Black Beauty. I have now lived in this happy place a whole year. Joe is the best and kindest of all of grooms. My work is easy and pleasant, and I feel my strength and spirits coming back again. Mr. Thorogood said to Joe the other day, in your place he will last till he is 20 years old, perhaps more. Willie always speaks to me when he can, and treats me as his special friend. My ladies have promised that I shall never be sold, and so I have nothing to fear, and here my story ends. My troubles are all over. I am at home, and often before I am quite awake, I fancy I am still in the orchard at Birtwick, standing with my old friends under the apple tree. So there we go. That's the end of Black Beauty, and a happy ending for Black Beauty in the end. Not so much for a lot of the other characters, but at least he's managed to find a nice home. And even though they say he might live till he's 20 years old, an awful lot of horses live a lot longer and can live into their 30s. So hopefully that meant Black Beauty had a lovely lifetime. So we're going to finish there. I'm going to put another quiz up on Purple Mash for you, and then tomorrow we're going to start our new book, which is being released a week at a time. I wonder if any of you can work out what a day at a time, I think, actually. I wonder if any of you can work out what it might be. It's from a very well-known author, and she is writing and releasing it for free during the lockdown. So good luck with that one. I'd love to hear what you liked and disliked about Black Beauty. In fact, I might do a book review as the final piece of work that we do on this, because it would be great to see what you thought. So I'll do a to publish, to hear about what your favourite parts were, what parts you liked, what you didn't like, how many stars you'd give it, all that sort of thing. So I hope you enjoyed. It's a classic book, and maybe at some point you'll get to see the film of it. Anyway, I will log back in tomorrow with the first part of our new book.